Mm-hmm.
Alright. While we wait...
Shit, did it actually show up as Arc Racing on TikTok? Shit, hold on. Fuck.
No, you posted it. Alright.
Shit.
The Sherman Firefly.
Arc Racing.
1. Development.
Never mind. No, you won't find it. Sweet.
So wrote the official Royal Army Corps
didn't.
6-monthly report, progress report in June 1944. General Harold Alexander, commander of the Allied armies Italy, stated that the Firefly was a weapon that I badly needed for the succession prosecutor of my campaign. Senior officers of the assault force regarded these equipments, Fireflies and crocodiles, as battle-deciding weapons. Every one you can produce will help materially to shorten the war. The 17-pounder tank is most popular. The crew consists themselves a match for any German tank, wrote Field Marshal Montgomery in a 1944 letter. These statements might be criticized given the Sherman's lack of armor and other shortcomings, but they show the wartime importance attached to the tank that we know today as the Sherman Firefly. One point that needs to be made early is that the name Firefly is not included in any War Office or Ministry of Supply technical or policy files, nor was it used by ministers, generals, or senior officials in any field correspondence that the author has seen whilst researching at the Public Record Office, PRO. Typically, it is referred to as Sherman 17-pounder, many variations, or the official designation of 17-pounder armament C as used in the Sherman IC or VC for M4 17-pounder and M4 A4 17, respectively. The name was used at brigade and regimental level in 21st Army Group until unit war diaries from March, April, and May 1944. The 4th Armored Brigade said that unit parties at Kirkbride commenced a period of firing practice using Firefly. The 8th Armored Brigade said on 30th March that Firefly shooting up by 24th Lancers at Holcomb Range. 29th Armored Brigade said that on 28th May, 24 Fireflies only just received. These are mentioned as early as March and the time of the first issues, so it does not seem to have time to develop with the units as a nickname. If the name was there right from the start, it must have some official citation either as a code name or a descriptive name. If it was developed locally and unofficially, one unit would have started it and then others would have heard it from the originating unit. It is still rather odd that which names such as Crab, Crocodile, Ram, and DD, etc. are used in the War Office files. Firefly was not. Yet here it is, used by the units reporting back to the same officials and officers at the War Office and Ministry of Supply in London who do not seem to have used the name in their own correspondence. It is also worth noting that only some units use the name. Most of the units from the sample of war diary files examined still refer to their vehicles as Sherman 17-pounders or Sherman VCs, not as Fireflies. There is also a caption for an Imperial War Museum photograph, which states, a Firefly 17-pounder Sherman tank, taken on 4th of May 1945. The caption may not, however, be one the same day as the photograph, and many captions have been updated over the years. One other comment from Jeff Plowman was that he had not found any mention of the name Firefly by New Zealand units in Italy, where a 17-pounder Sherman was used. The issue of the name is further confused by the 24th Lancers used in the report from July in Normandy of the names Mayfly and Mayflies. Sergeant Jack Moat, whom the author has interviewed, took Fireflies into action and had 3 shot out from under him in the process of receiving the DCM. Sergeant Moat was a Firefly commander for the 1st Royal Tank Regiment, and they used his name extensively into the unit war diary. He was stated that he picked up his first example before D-Day in 1944, and always knew the 17-pounder armed Sherman as Firefly. Please see later in the book on page 122 for more on the Sergeant Moat's experiences, quoted in part from Tank, the Journal of the Royal Tank Regiment. The name Firefly seems to also have been used to rearm the U.S. motor carriage M10Cs, commonly called Achilles, although in this file's variation, the M10 17-pounder is more unusual. The 1944 caption at the Imperial War Museum for an M10 17-pounder refers to it as a Firefly. The first time the name Firefly was published in 1946 in The Story of the 23rd Hustlers, and again in 1952 in Major D.J.L. Fitzgerald's History of the Irish Guards in the Second World War. It may have also been in the 1949 edition. It also appears in 1954, Major General G.L. Verney's The Desert Rats. There it is. Finally came about towards the end of 1943, an alternative to the officially sponsored British AC-30 Challenger program. The aim for this project was to produce a 17-pounder armed tank to combat the new German tanks encountered by the British in North Africa and Italy. Even by mid-1943, as many British tanks were still armed with 2 or 6-pounder guns. On 27th of August 1943, a meeting was held that suggested that the United States be asked to ascertain if a 17-pounder gun could be mounted into a Sherman. Meanwhile, work in Britain was going on to do just that. But as of late July 1943, Challenger was still seen as the only way forward. Pardon me. On 30th September, there was still no mention in the Firefly on any list projects. However, on the 7th of October 1943, VCITS, Vice Chief Imperial General Staff, wrote to CNC 21st Army Group, "We are trying to get a 17-pounder into a Sherman, and it looks promising." Key senior players were the Director of the Royal Armor Corps, Dr. Drac, General Briggs, and the Director General Armored Fighting Vehicles, DGA.
Hello, I am back.
Shut up, time reading. Claude O'Gibb, whose name appeared many times in the files. Key engineers were Lieutenant Colonel G. Withergrid, Major T. Bridie, and the Vickers engineer, Mr. W. Kilbourne, who has been credited with the concept and the vision of try what seemed to some an outlandish idea. Brightly had trialed a 17-pounder in a Sherman, a fixed mount similar to later German experience in Yak Panthers, in which the mount transferred recoil forces to the whole tank. It worked, but not as a safe solution in the longer term. Withridge and Colburn took the concept to the next stage and turned it into a viable proposition. Kilbourne was responsible for most of the innovations that distinguished a Firefly from a standard Sherman. In 1943, the Sherman was still a new design, with what was considered a useful 75mm gun and a good match against the Panzer IIIs and the Panzer IVs. That is still formally the mainstay of the German armored force. The Tiger had only met in small numbers, and Panthers was a virtually unknown quantity. On 16th of October 1943, the conclusion of the meeting was recorded as the installation of the 17-pounder in the Sherman tank shows promise of being successful. On the 29th, another note admits that, as a stopgap measurement, mount 17-pounder Sherman M4 tanks. In November, Brigadier MacLeod Ross wrote from Detroit, where he worked at the British Technical Museum with Chrysler. Fuck off. The manufacturer of the M4A4 and many other Shermans used for Fireflies, to his superiors in Washington the subject of 17-pounder and M4A4. MacLeod Ross was an enthusiastic supporter of the 17-pounder. In a letter mentioned above, he provided a detailed rundown of the vehicle, knowing that mock-up completed 31st of October and shows to DCIGS and DRAC. He calls it a very good job and lists the basics of what became Firefly or the Sherman C. This following the shipping of a 17-pounder to Canada
Matrix,
had some other paper
just look at your
design.
chat for a second, please.
God damn it. Let me finish the sentence. To Canada, some paper design work to see if the concept was feasible. Alright, what the fuck did you do?
Just look at what I sent you. You're gonna love it.
Fucking Christ. What did you do? I'm not gonna click that.
Come on, click it.
Nope.
Dude, trust me, you're gonna laugh at it. You're gonna laugh at it, I swear to you.
Nah.
Or it's
No.
one of the
There's a very blurred picture of Peter with Brian and a forklift. And that's out of my ears. Anywho, where was I? Ross was perhaps optimistic with his production estimate of 1,000 by April 1st, 1944. Not
So,
far
is
out
Cletus
from
back yet?
with his 2,000 would probably be ordered. Ross's letter was not well received. Indeed, to this day, he remains a somewhat controversial but nonetheless important figure. And in the file states that it was entirely
Matrix.
unauthorized. Further,
I have that for you to listen to, please.
No,
Also,
I heard it. I took out my earbud.
No. I sent you
Further
nothing.
records
Also,
records
Mud, I
that
want you to
despite
listen to
tests,
this.
not everyone was convinced
It's
that
not
the
too bad.
17
It's
pounder
literally
conversion.
just a tractor. My tractor. I want you
While
to hear how
experiments are
crisp
in an
that is.
advanced state, there's every possibility that they will prove successful. This argument has not yet been tested. Whether the detailed personalities, the project was well underway by December 1943. The RAC's 6-monthly progress report in December 1943 states, in the United Kingdom, development is now proceeding of the installation of the 17-pounder in Sherman. The first tanks mounted this weapon are likely to be ready in early 1944. On 6th of January 1944, a document
right
stated
back.
that successful investigations have been carried out. This shows how quickly the project proceeded. Drax Advisory Committee had viewed the vehicle recently and had approved of the conversion. On November 30th, 1943, a report states the 17-pounder has now become available on tanks with a modified breech ring to make it suitable for Shermans. The project was known outside military circles as early as the end of November 1943. A member of Parliament, Sam Hammersley, wrote a paper critical of United Kingdom tank policy on December 1st. The reliable American Sherman tanks can now mount the 17-pounder gun. The follow-up paper contains an investigation into what appears to be a leak of information to this MP. This was part of the long-running interest of many MPs in the House of Commons and the real and perceived shortcomings of British tanks. Challenger had fallen behind schedules, proving to be barely acceptable as a tank on account of its height, thin armor, and layout problems. To be fair, it was no worse than many German improvisations. It did actually enter service, but later than Firefly, and is only equipped with a few units of very low numbers. The RAC 6 monthly progress report states the case against Challenger, further production not contemplated due to high silhouette and thin armor. General R.M. Weeks, the Deputy Chief of the Imperial General Staff, is recorded in July 1944 as commenting that it was a temporary and rapid means of putting 17-pounder into a Cromwell formations. Once the senator politicians became aware of the project, it received maximum support from the Prime Minister Winston Churchill down. Letters and reports in various files shows it assumed the highest priority. The following statement dated January 12, 1944 about 3 projects, Sherman 17-pounder guns, A-34 Common, and the Heavy Churchill, what we know today as the Churchill Mark 7, states, highest priority, equal to that according to anything else in the whole munitions program. Churchill agreed with this view, seeming very interested in the whole issue, as was appropriate from most influential British political figures involving the original development of the tank in the First World War. He is reported to have said, "Our only hope for a tank with a high-velocity gun in Overlord is the Sherman." He also said, "The MOS, Ministry of Supply, has apparently made a very good job of fitting our 17-pounder into some of the Sherman tanks. The first 5 successfully passed their firing trials, and we shall have a real contribution to Overlord." From February 1944. Receipts of these converted vehicles have begun. Issues to units are taking place. 2. Production. When the problems with the Challenger became apparent in late 1943, Firefly assumed the greater importance than it had done previously. It became officially sponsored with an almost frenzied conversation program of available Shermans, almost all the Sherman 5s at this stage, and Royal Ordnance factories, ROF to C standards. Firms quoted supply 17-pounder equipment for those Shermans included A.V.W. Smith and ROF Cardiff, ROF Leeds, and oil wells. Smith delivered 12 units in December 1943 from an order dated November 29, 1943. Cardiff produced 43 by June 1944 from an order dated 12th of November 1943. ROF Leeds had an order for 45 units dated 13th of November. The largest individual order was for 757 units from ROF Cardiff on January 1st, 1944, and the last order found was for 500 on December 30th, 1944, also from ROF Cardiff. The total listed was 3,414 units. These were called the 17-pounder weapon system various things. For instance, 3-inch 17 CWT Sherman tank gun Mark 8 and 3-inch 17-pounder tank gun Mark II, or 3-inch 17-pounder tank including barrel. These names do not tie in with those in published sources. The only sources of confusion are with the weapons for the M10C conversions. There may be a degree of mixing within the order books to two of the systems, but these orders quote the firms and ROS, including in making the guns for Firefly. It is remarkable that given Britain's limited industrial capacity, enough were made to equip the often quoted figure of 1 troop per by the D-Day, and non-infantry tanks equipped units include those of Cromwell.
I've made
Hi.
a shorter spear.
Huh?
I've made a shorter spear.
Good for you. I'm reading. The table of production shows that...
This is a weekend stream.
Why? Just stab him in the eye.
What are you reading about?
Firefly.
Oh.
We're waiting on people, so I'm passing time. Sure.
Are they scary?
Wait, what's
No.
happening?
I didn't expect you to walk right behind me.
Waiting on
Go.
latest.
Oh, shoot. Invite me back into it.
Go. No. Alright. The table of production shows that some 342 have been produced at the end of May 1944. This ties in with the 338 issued or in stock record recorded in the on the Rack 6-monthly progress report for the end of June 1944. 120 all VCs have been issued on 3rd of May 1944, 43 in ordnance depots, 13 under minor repair, 6 with REME, and another 33 in factories, 16 having passed inspected for issue. 160 by May 15th seems possible. There was never enough Fireflies, and on May 14th it headed the list of tanks in short supply. Every effort is being made to increase the value of conversion. By the war's end, Firefly production and rebuilding was such that most units in Northwest Europe had doubled their ratio of 2 per troop. Other notes existing giving slightly different figures that seem to have changed by the day. The figures quoted are only a guide based on the information recorded at the time. There is little firm evidence as to where the 17-pounder Shermans were converted. A report from DGAFV to DRAG stated 15th of January 1943 on the lack of suitable Shermans for conversion to 17-pounder, a common theme provides a clue. According to the note, DGAFV said, "The minister may wish to know the stock position regarding Sherman tanks suitable for conversion to 17-pounder. There is less than 14 days' work ahead of the 4 factories involving this conversion. If there were other factories involved, it seemed likely from information and other sources can be seen as snapshot in time. This is a definitive as any source.
Jesus
17-pounder
Christ, is everybody
ammunition
back
seems-
yet? No.
17-pounder ammunition seems to have been made at, for example, ROF Burley's, Woodwick, London, J. Mackey and Son, Belfast, John Jading Ltd, Nottinghamshire, and Milking Pearls,
not opening
Doncaster, South Yorkshire.
No, the last one I seen is a drag race.
During the build-up of the invasion, 6-pound armored tanks with APDS were considered a substitute for 17-pounder tanks. Firing APDS, the 6-pounder was considered as good as a 17-pounder. Initially, only Sherman units were to use Firefly, but problems with Challenger caused this policy to be changed. In addition, it was proposed to provide some 6-pounder Cromwells. 21st Army Group 21st Army Group rejected this, so 6-pounder Cromwells are not used in Northwest Europe, as far as is known. Therefore, Firefly provided the anti-tank firepower to these regiments, as well as Sherman-equipped units. The 75mm was, however, still preferred as a general-purpose gun. 75% of the shooting done by the tank guns is HE. 70-pounder did not have very good HE round, so it could never be a total replacement for a 75mm armed tank. Until a reliable and accurate 17-pounder HE shell was forthcoming, units were advised to accepting more than 2 17-pounder tanks into each troop. A shortage of suitable tanks made this rather unlikely. In addition, HE ammunition produced was also too low to meet requirements. In fact, as low as 5% total of ammunition was supplied, according to one report. Another report stated that 17-pounder HE was unsatisfactory. A considerable percentage failed to detonate. The shortage of suitable 75mm Shermans for conversion was so great that the 21st Army Group operational research reports noted that partially brewed up tanks are reconditioned for service. This did little for the Sherman's already poor armor, which, as the report notes, should be partially penetrated to 1.5 inches or 38 millimeters by 50 cal bearing Browning HMGs at 100 yards. The adequate armor was of little use. In no recorded case has the extra outside adequate armor resisted any hit. The only thing to help us keep ammunition in the bins provided where they had some protection from shell fragments. This could be provided by the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards, who suffered fewer brew-ups than other units, due to strict discipline on ammunition stowage. This report also notes that adding extra armor on was an effective way of improvising Allied tanks, and that the best way to help was to upgun them. This suggestion would appear to be in keeping with present policy, an obligate reference to the 17-pounder Firefly program. In original documents, what we now call adequate armor is sometimes referred to as ammunition protector plates. One report contains an interesting section from the period before D-Day on quick-fix armor. Presumably, this means adequate armor was no longer official edition armor applied to British Shermans. It states, the Sherman quick-fix scheme does not apply to 17-pounder tanks. Rounds stowed above the turret floor or in the front of the compartment are in armored bins. Normal 75mm tanks seem to have high priority for adequate armor with 200 new M4A4 fitted in deposits and depots. All 4th Armored Brigade M4A4 and lesser numbered units, M4A2 was already fitted, and M4 and M4A1 were being equipped. In the war diary dated 21st March 1944, there is a mention by the 27th Armored Brigade that quick-fix armor being fitted to Shermans of 13/18 Tusslers. The brigade was getting its first Firefly time at the work of the 17-pounder ammunition, and noted on the same page. The 8th Armored Brigade said on April 3, 1944, that they were fitting into their tanks, at rate of 8 per day by brigade workshops. All Sherman IC hybrids seem to have been fitted in standard, and it seems very common on rolled steel hulls ICs. 3,285 sets were on order for the USA. The parent firm for the work was John Holdings Ltd. of Hatfield.
Is Cletus back yet?
Hertfordshire.
No.
The same file noted that despite the name Quick Fix, each set took 140 hours
Matrix,
to fit.
please stop reading the dictionary.
It's not a dictionary.
Still,
Fireflies rebuilt or those that seemed installed during the manufacture or rebuilt in the USA were not included in the program. Another source, a receipt for the Sherman IC in all of 1944, also refers to Quick Fix armor. The ammunition bins were called New Ever Ready Type.
He's reading on tanks.
But the meaning of the latter is not altogether clear. Many quotes can be found concerning the lack of suitable 75mm tanks for conversion to Fireflies. The 76mm and 105mm armed M4s were unsuitable for conversion, as is shown in documents. In one answer to a question from Montgomery, he was told, for a variety of technical considerations connected with the position of the turrets, the telescope, and the elevating gear, the 76mm tanks could only have converted at the expense of the developing of A41, later become Centurion. The 105mm tanks lacked power traverse, what was essential for an anti-tank vehicle. Types other than M4s and M4A4s do not seem to have been used. This issue is covered in more detail later. In the second half of 1944 and into 1945, the continual plea in the official reports was for more Fireflies as the potency of the vehicle became apparent. In January 1945, Churchill prepared draft signals to President Roosevelt almost into a move of desperation. One version stated, "I beg that you will do your best, particularly that the flow of Sherman tanks suitable for mounting a 17-pounder shall be supplied up to the limit which we can provide ourselves capable of converting." This followed the discussions that could be summed up with the following pessimistic statements in this file dated 28th of December 1944. Our demand for American tanks for 1944 was 8,960. You have actually been assigned 5,490. The effect will be gradual exhaustion for our own resources, and the stoppage of the supply of Sherman suitable for consideration to take out 17-pounder. In order to meet the situation, efforts are being made by the various expedients to overcome the shortage of Shermans for conversion. Pickle, turn off your mic.
You.
Thank you. Britain received no Sherman.
And my ex-wife also declined to come. It's been 4 years, Barbara. Let me see the kids.
Hang on.
Okay, I'll shut the fuck up.
Thank you.
Jesus Christ, it's like a fucking century without Cletus being here, though.
Britain received no
Holy
Shermans in November and December 1944. The British seem to have placed the blame firmly on the Americans. The same file includes a rather harsh statement. Americans have gradually reduced their production and have used up more tanks than they expected. Part of the solution was a proposal to return 50 from Italy for overhaul. In the end, there do not appear to have been significant Sherman deliveries to the United Kingdom in 1945. Those that have been delivered seem to have been M4A1 76Ws, and from post-war photographic evidence of some M4A2 76Ws that are used for duplex drive conversions. The supply of Sherman strained this special relationship, and Roosevelt's death cannot have helped matters. The Americans seem to think that the more cautious British policy on reserves is part of the difficulty. In the end, the problem was a shortage of 75mm Shermans rather than Shermans as a whole. Production of 75mm Sherman ceased mid-1944, and the War Office now meeting our demands for 75 by reassigning of tanks for Turkey, reworks ex-USA, reassigned from ETO USA, etc. Further, it states that the existing rate of production is unlikely to achieve much more than the replacement of wastage for some time. For more information on the issue, see Fletcher's Universal Tank in particular and Ross's Business of Tanks for an alternate view. Firefly production has been a matter of much debate over the years. Most have accepted a figure of about 600, and this has been repeated over the years. It's not clear where that number came from, but it seems common by the late 1950s. More recently, it's become accepted that far more than 600 vehicles were built. To 31,345, orders totaled 3,260 conversions, with 2,139 being produced. Scale of issue is based on 2 per troop of armored regiments. Their support categorized as states. No further conversions will be carried out as there is no requirement for this vehicle in the Far East. This is out of a total M4 series association to the United Kingdom of 16,944 vehicles, according to LMAB Association. This represents a simple 3.5% of all Shermans associated with the United Kingdom being converted to Firefly or C-Sander. In the previous report, December 1944, 3,100 ordered with 1,794 completed. A summary of the figures for 21st and 15th Army groups from RAC's progress works presented in Table 2 below. That's unnecessary. A few were also held in the United Kingdom. For example, in December 1944, 17 were held for training and experimental work. In June 1945, 35 were held in training units only. None were in experimental groups, suggesting that the Firefly's heyday was over. Table 3 shows the monthly conversion figures for C-Sander, as reported to Prime Minister Churchill on the monthly association figures for Shermans of all types to the United Kingdom. Regrettably, no figures are given up after February 1945. No mention is made of any conversion for U.S. forces up to 100, or in Canada, perhaps 1, as seems to have happened
Matrix,
from
you should
available
just build
estimates.
your own tank.
I want to. There's one I really want to make, because it's very small, and it shouldn't be too difficult to make, but...
Just make sure I'm in it on the first ride.
I'll look up the CV-33. It's... Just look that up.
Okay.
The June 1945 RAC 6 monthly
That
progress
is
report.
literally on my bucket list to ride in a tank.
Same. Quote above gives total of 2,139. If this is correct, 137 conversions were made in March, April, and possibly May 1945. Evidence is available that production tailed off in April as a document. Unplanned production states it is further proposed to curtail the conversion of American tanks. Curtail in this instance does not mean stop, but to limit or restrict.
We're still waiting on Cletus.
Conversions could perhaps have continued until June. The war was nearly over in Europe. CV-33.
CV-33?
Yes. Conversions could perhaps have continued until June. The war was nearly over in Europe, and they were not required against the Japanese. This would make sense after 5 years of war, a virtually bankrupt Britain started to look towards the requirements for a peacetime economy. The information on the U.S. Army conversions made in the United Kingdom seems to show that
Oh, that tank looks fun.
Oh yeah, it's a small little tankette.
He's a little tanky.
The information on the U.S. Army conversions made in the United
we
Kingdom.
lost Cletus.
Fuck.
He'll be right back.
Seems to show that to this British total, another 8 U.S. vehicles might have been added, plus another 20 partially built. These were to be offered to the British, bringing the total about 2,239, unless the U.S. conversions were included. What? No, it's an Italian tank. A 2,139 figure. There is nothing in the files to offer any firm conclusions as to.
Logos on the side of it?
Probably because the Italians were on the Axis side for a good amount of the war before they switched over.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Nothing follows off any conclusions where the conversions are made other than within the United Kingdom, and if the 80 to 100 are included in the total of 2,139 or not. If the 80 completed vehicles are included in the 2,139 total, then Britain only made 50% of conversions for itself in the period from March to when the project ended, presumably May or possibly late April. If the full 100 are included, then there are only 37 British conversions over a period of 2 to 3 months. It is possible that Belgium and the Netherlands converted some post-war, but there is no firm evidence of this. Table 3 also shows Sherman delivery figures from December 1944.
Wait, what happened to the other
6-month
two?
REC progress report. By way of conversion, Table 4 shows Challenger production from the same source as Table 3. Production was shorter Challengers by May 1945. Ty's here, Cletus left. A report to the Prime Minister dated January 3rd, 1945. Yes, he's still here. DGAFV stated that in 1944, 1,783 Sherman.
Oh shit!
He said he'd be right back. Had been converted to carry the 17 pounder, and this agreed completely with the Table 3. Way of comparison: only 816 M10s, 969 by the end of February, had been converted to Achilles standard among the 354 Archers and mere 145 Challengers. Re-equipment of units, more modern tanks or other purposes did help. For example, when 29th Armored Brigade were equipped with Comets before Christmas 1944, it released 45 Sherman ICs and 15 VC for other issues. 33rd Armored Brigade was converted to specialist armor such as LVT-4 Buffalo amphibians as of late January 1945, thus giving up its Firefly for other units. As will be seen later, 33rd Armored Brigade was again given some Fireflies the first week of April, the last month of the war. Compared to its German opponents and some newer Allied designs, all this work has been done despite the manifest weakness that the Firefly had. It was, however, available and it worked. Comet and M26 were untried, and only Comet entered service in any numbers. And a 26th of October 1944 document referring to Northwestern Europe states, during November/December, all regiments could receive 2 Sherman 17-pounders per troop and be maintained on this base till the end of March. After this date, it is most unlikely, owing to a lack of suitable Shermans, that any further will become available. Moreover, it states, we may expect during April/May that Sherman 17-pounders in this theater will be wasted, with no hope of replacement. In December, the British asked for a special plea for sufficient reworked Sherman 75mm to maintain the Firefly program. Stocks of 75mm armed Shermans in the United Kingdom on 30th December 1944, recorded in one file for 90 M4s and 310 M4A1s. On 31st of December, 450 Shermans of all types were undergoing conversion to 17-pounders and other purposes.
But I need a second to load in and take a leak.
Another file at the same time lists 1,900 Shermans of all types in the United Kingdom. This did not include crabs and ARVs, but many would have been Fireflies and does not give an idea of the efforts going into the program at this time. This information can be compared to the 90 Shermans available for Firefly conversions on the 15th of January 1945. Interestingly, this ties with the United Kingdom stock of 90 75mm M4s recorded earlier in this paragraph, some 16 days earlier. This was set into context of the Sherman shortage and concluded with the DGAFV's comment to the drag. You'll appreciate the desperate situation, all these factors. By imagine can do nothing to change the situation. I have one paragraph and
momentarily. I have to take a piss.
I have one paragraph left to the next section, alright? It's one paragraph.
I quit blowing my money on liquor, but the old Indian feller at the liquor store calls me buddy, and he's got a family to feed, so...
The American tank supply situation was very bad at the end of 1944, and 21st Army groups transferred some standard Shermans to U.S. forces. It was expected that U.S. in turn would provide some 75mm Shermans for conversion to 17-pounder. One document, 31st December 1944, shut up, I'm almost done. 352 Shermans were transferred to the U.S. This may be resolved losses in the... I'm on the last one. German Ardennes offense, which was a major factor in the shortage. This in turn caused problems with the Firefly program in the United Kingdom. As a result of transfer of all tanks to the U.S., not only possible to send tanks to the United Kingdom for 17-pounder conversion, suggesting that 75mm tanks were also sent to Americans, not just 76mm vehicles. On the 12th of January 1945, the same file states, U.S. War Department of having 90 M4s rebuilt 75mm tanks shipped to the United Kingdom for conversion to 17-pounder. The United Kingdom to give 90 Shermans to the U.S. and ETO in return. These Shermans to be M4A176W tanks are the types of I'm almost done! Fuck off! Popular the British forces. This shortage have lasted till early 1945, but which Sherman was too late to make any impact on the available 75mm Sherman. Increasingly, whilst the United I'm almost done, fuck off!
No, I have a question.
Let me finish, hold on. Yes, hang on.
I didn't get,
so still committed to 75mm Sherman in the U.S. Utah. Law's interest in one report notes quite distinctly that 75mm Shermans were no longer required, that they should be converted to 76mm. One wonders why it might have resulted thus effort had been combined with the Firefly conversion program. By then, age-strapped ammunition for 76mm gun was becoming available in sufficient amounts to issue small quantities to tank crews. Also, German tanks were becoming scarcer, and the need for anti-tank performance consequently less. Done!
Yeah, Matrix, I didn't get like half of that. Can you like start from the beginning?
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up!
I'm fucking with you guys.
Sorry, I